But I want to just take a few moments. I mentioned up at Planned Parenthood this whole idea of 200,000 babies murdered each and every single day. You know, we always used to use the number 110,000 babies, between 46 million a year, 40 million a year, 42 million a year, and 56 million a year. But Lancet, which is basically the New England Journal of Medicine, but in the United Kingdom, came out with a document in July of 2020. And they said this: there were 121 million unintended pregnancies annually between 2015 and 2019. Get your mind around that. 121 million unintended pregnancies annually. 61% of them ended in abortion. That came out to an average of 73 million babies each and every year between 2015 and 2019 worldwide. If you take that number 73, that's 200,000 babies every single day worldwide. I mean, that's staggering. We can't even get our mind around this. So I want that to set the tone for 4 articles that I'm going to read. 4 chapters, 2 in Evangelium Vitae and 2 in Living the Gospel of Life. They're pretty short. It's only going to take a few minutes. But this really, I think, puts context to why we're here in front of the USCCB meeting. Now, EWTN a few years ago asked me to come and preach 10 homilies in 2 weeks before the 2016 election. And I said, Lord, what am I going to preach, 10 homilies in 2 weeks before the election? And I don't hear our Lord's voice, but he talks to me in my thoughts. He said, church documents, church documents. And I said this in D.C. If you want to influence your pastor and you want to influence your bishop, don't go to them with your opinion. Go to them with church documents. 2,000 years of church documents. And I'm just going to read 2 articles from 2 very recent documents. Evangelium Vitae, Living the Gospel of Life by St. John Paul II, and then Living the Gospel of Life, the USCCB document unanimously passed 3 years after Evangelium Vitae in 1998. All right, so here's the Holy Father, St. John Paul II says, among all the crimes that can be committed against life, procured abortion has characteristics particularly making it serious and deplorable. But today, in many people's consciences, the perception of its gravity has become progressively obscured. The acceptance of abortion in the popular mind and behavior, even law itself, is a telling sign of the extreme dangerous crisis of the moral sense, pointing to an incapability of ever more distinguishing between good and evil. Given such a grave situation, we need now more than ever to have the courage to look the truth in the eye and call things by their proper name. That is why we have abortion victim imagery here today. Without yielding to convenient compromises or to the temptation of self-deception. No word has the power to change the reality of things. Procured abortion is the deliberate and direct killing, by whatever means it's carried out, of a human being in the initial phase of his or her existence. The moral gravity of procured abortion is apparent in all its truth if we recognize we're dealing with murder. It's the Holy Father, St. John Paul II. Now, he now challenges each and every single one of us with this. To be true, this is Article 82. So I just read 58. This is 82. To be truly a people at the service of life, we must propose these truths constantly and courageously from the very first proclamation of the gospel. Faced with so many opposing points of view and widespread rejection of sound doctrine concerning human life, we can feel Paul's treatise to Timothy addressed to us. Preach the word, be urgent in season and out of season, convince, rebuke, exhort, be unfailing in patience and in teaching. This exhortation should resound with special force in the hearts of the members of the church who directly share in the mission as teacher. And the Holy Father says this to our pastors, our shepherds. May it resound above all for us who are bishops. We are the first called to be untiring preachers of the gospel of life. We're entrusted with the task of ensuring that the document, which is once again being set forth in this encyclical, is faithfully handed on its integrity. We must use appropriate means to defend the faithful from all teaching which is contrary to it, so that they never be so grievously irresponsible as to betray the truth and their own mission by imposing personal ideas contrary to the gospel of life. Hold on one second. Can somebody hold this for me? Hold on one second. Thank you, Michael. Yeah. And he ends 82 with this. In the proclamation of this gospel, and he's talking to the bishops, we must not fear hostility or unpopularity, and we must refuse any compromise or ambiguity which might conform us to the world's way of thinking. Now, in Living the Gospel of Life, the USCCB's document, the bishops talk directly to themselves. And they say this in 28, as bishops, we have the responsibility to call Americans to conversion, including political leaders, especially those publicly identified as Catholic. The Holy Father reminds us in the Splendor of Truth, Veritatis Splendor, that it's part of our pastoral ministry to see to it that the church's moral teaching is faithfully handed on, and to have recourse to appropriate measures to ensure that the faithful are guarded from every doctrine and theory contrary to it. As chief teachers in the church, we must therefore explain, persuade, correct, and admonish those in leadership positions who contradict the gospel of life through their actions and policies. Catholic public leaders who disregard church teachings on the inviolability of human person indirectly collude in the taking of innocent life. A private call to conversion should always be the first step in dealing with these leaders. At the same time, we need to redouble our efforts to evangelize and catechize our people on the dignity of life and the wrongness of abortion. Nonetheless, some Catholic officials may exclude themselves from the truth by refusing to open their minds to the church's witness. In all cases, the bishops have a duty and pastoral I apologize, it's technical stuff. Yeah. Just hold it for a second. Let me find the cursor here. Talk about taking away from dramatic. I can't find the cursor. There it is. Where is it? Oh, yeah. Okay. No, it's coming. Okay. No, I got it. Okay, I apologize. Nonetheless, some Catholic officials may exclude themselves from the truth by refusing to open their minds to the church's witness. In all cases, bishops have the duty and pastoral responsibility to continue to challenge these officials on the issue in question and persistently call them to a change of heart. In 31, again, the bishops, we urge those Catholic officials who choose to depart from church teaching on the inviolability of human life in their public life to consider the consequences for their own spiritual well-being, as well as the scandal they risk by leading others into serious sin. We call on them to reflect on the grave contradiction of assuming public roles and presenting themselves as credible Catholics when their actions on fundamental issues of human life are not in agreement with church teaching. No public official, especially one claiming to be a faithful and serious Catholic, can responsibly advocate for or actively support direct attacks on innocent human life. Those who justify their inaction on the grounds that abortion is the law of the land need to recognize that there's a higher law, the law of God. No human law can validly contradict the commandment, thou shalt not kill. All right, so I just read 4 articles. The Holy Father, St. John Paul II, in 58 of Evangelium Vitae, calls abortion murder. In 82, challenges the bishops to live this gospel day in and day out. I mean, we're talking about now in the face of 200,000 babies being mass murdered every day in the world. And then in Living the Gospel of Life, the USCCB document unanimously passed in 1998, Articles 28. And if you haven't read Living the Gospel of Life, go home and get it and read it. And then bring it to your pastor. Send it to your bishops. Number 28 and 31 is what I just read. And only parts of it. And the only thing we're doing here is we are asking our shepherds to heed their own teaching, their own preaching, their own words. And we're here to witness to that, to encourage them, and to pray that indeed they will live up to the challenge of St. John Paul II, and the challenge, because Living the Gospel of Life, the title is Living the Gospel of Life, a challenge, all right, to Catholics in the United States. All right, so with that, just that piece of advice, church documents, bring them to your pastors, bring them to your bishops, and just ask them to please follow the documents, the teachings of our church.